All right, so you know how much you care about what's happening in the world and how everything kind of connects.
Uh-huh.
Well, today we're diving deep into something that's really hitting close to home for a lot of people.
Mm,
We're talking about climate change,
right.
but not just in like a big abstract way.
Yeah.
We're talking about kids in South Sudan who are missing school because it's literally too hot to be in a classroom.
Wow.
So, yeah, we've got the research right here.
Okay.
And it's pretty alarming, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a tough reality check for sure. It's definitely grabbed attention worldwide, the situation in South Sudan.
Yeah.
Like these extreme heat waves are forcing schools to close, and it brings up some really big questions
Yeah.
about the future of education, not just for them, but for everyone, globally.
So, okay, like, paint a picture for us. What's actually happening on the ground there?
Yeah,
Because this research mentions, like, students actually collapsing from the heat.
right. Imagine classrooms, no air conditioning, temperatures soaring way higher than, what most of us consider okay.
Yeah.
Talking heat indexes that make it super hard to even function, let alone like focus on learning.
Right.
And kids are getting sick, some are even collapsing. Yeah, it's bad. That's why officials decided they had to close schools. It was a tough decision, but...
So, like, what happens to these kids when schools close?
Exactly.
Do they just stay home? I mean, is there any way to keep them learning when it's that hot?
Yeah, that's the real challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just about canceling school.
Right.
We have to rethink how we teach in a world where the climate is changing so rapidly.
Yeah.
There are some really cool solutions that people are trying out all over the world.
Oh, really?
For example, in some places in India, they've started holding classes during the cooler parts of the day, like really early morning or even evening classes.
Mm.
And then in Bangladesh, they're building schools with special materials and ventilation techniques that reflect the heat to make classrooms cooler.
So it's kind of like learn from the people who are already dealing with it.
Exactly. Sharing these ideas and figuring out how to make them work in South Sudan could be really important.
Okay, yeah.
They're also looking at things like green roofs.
Oh, like planting stuff on the roofs.
Yeah, to absorb heat, and using solar-powered fans for better ventilation.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It seems like these really intense heat waves are getting more and more frequent in South Sudan.
Mm-hmm.
Is that directly because of climate change?
It's definitely playing a big part.
Okay.
I mean, South Sudan has always been hot,
Right.
but the heat waves are getting more intense. They're happening more often.
Right.
The data backs that up pretty clearly,
Mm.
and it really lines up with what we're seeing globally, with temperatures rising all over.
So this isn't just a South Sudan problem then, is it?
No, not at all.
What are some of the parallels between what's happening there and the challenges education is facing around the world?
So many countries, especially in the developing world, are dealing with similar things.
Like what?
Rising sea levels are a huge threat for coastal communities and their schools. Extreme weather events are disrupting everything.
Yeah.
You've got displacement, water scarcity, making it really tough for some schools to function at all. It really shows how connected these global issues are.
Yeah.
Like, we need a real coordinated effort to handle this stuff.
It feels like we're kind of getting a preview of what the future might look like.
Yeah.
You know, with education constantly being interrupted by these kinds of events.
It is a real possibility, and that's why it's so important to start adapting now.
What do you mean by adapting?
We need to build resilience into our education systems.
Yeah.
Like building schools that can withstand extreme weather, creating early warning systems, and training teachers so they can adjust their teaching to these new realities. If we want all children to have access to a good, consistent education, no matter what happens with the climate, we need to take these steps now.
Well, this all sounds so huge. Like, what can we actually do about this?
Yeah.
Both individually and as, a global community to make sure all kids, no matter where they are, have access to safe, consistent education.
It is a huge problem,
Yeah.
but there are things we can do.
Like what?
Supporting organizations that are working on these solutions on the ground, that's a big one.
Okay.
We can advocate for policies that prioritize climate action and education funding. And honestly, even making small changes in our own lives to reduce our carbon footprint can make a difference.
So, like, taking action in our own lives, supporting the people working on the solutions, and pushing for bigger systemic change.
Exactly.
I like it.
I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
If it's already so hot in South Sudan that schools are closing, what other crazy ways might climate change affect our lives in the future? It's something we all need to think about.
Wow, that's definitely something to think about. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was great.
It was really eye-opening.